What is up, my friend? Welcome to episode number 28 of the Anthony John Amix podcast. And today I'm bringing you a good friend of mine, Jason Croft of Croft Media, to talk about how to create a content strategy. You know, I feel like not enough people are really talking about this in the game as a coach, as a course creator. And it seems like, man, back in the day, like that's what everybody was talking about. Content, right? And then now it seems like everybody and their mother and probably their pet monkey is talking about funnels and Facebook ads. And I've kind of found that this like a really solid, sustainable strategy for marketing is not like really either or, like either paid ads or either content. It's actually and also. So it's really both. It's like, how can you have a solid content strategy as your foundation and then bolt on funnels and paid ads on top of that foundation? You get what I'm saying? So today I'm going to be asking Jason a ton of questions to help you create a really solid content strategy. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Anthony John Amix podcast, the one and only podcast designed to help you become unstoppable in life and business. My name is Anthony John Amix. My friends call me AJ. And my goal with this podcast is to help you remember who you truly are so you can maintain your center in the chaos, embody your potential, and unlock freedom in your life and business. That being said, let's get into today's show.
All right, welcome back. Now, before I bring on Jason, let me tell you a little bit about who the dude is. Well, he's a content rock star who doesn't get as much recognition as I believe that he truly deserves, and he knows the content strategy better than pretty much anybody in the game. And he has coordinated all the media for like the Mayweather, the Pacquiao, the Maypac boxing event. I mean, holy smokes, right? He's done that for a lot of other high-end events as well, and he helps B2B pros render their competition meaningless with media that attracts clients. And if you're a coach or course creator listening to this episode and thinking to yourself, well, I'm not B2B, so what Jason has to share, it's not really for me. You're wrong. Stay tuned because Jason believes every company is a media company, like it or not. Welcome to the game of modern day marketing. So it's time to embrace these facts and use media in ways that you may have never really been taught. And if you don't, then your company, your personal brand is going to die cold and alone in the shadow of your rivals. Because if you're not speaking to your clients and your potential customers daily, I guarantee you someone else will. Guaranteed. Now, before I bring Jason on, I want to let you know about my Facebook community called Shift. It's all about helping coaches and course creators increase their income and impact. And every single Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I host a lunch and learn on the various ways to scale your business, grow your team, and create a life of peace and meaning. So you can join the other 200 plus members for free by going to www.ajamyx.com/community. Again, that's ajamyx.com/community, because it can be like really hard to find a community of like-minded people who are working towards similar goals. And one of the things that I love about my Shift community is it's filled with just amazing, incredible people who are totally open to learning and supporting one another on their path towards mastery. So if you want to join the conversation and connect with some absolute amazing human beings, head on over to ajamyx.com/community and then click join. And remember, it's absolutely free. Now, with that being said, let's bring on the homie, Jason Croft. What up, sexy? Welcome to the podcast, homie.
Hey, how's it going, man? Good to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. So today, my friend, we're going to be talking about like all things related to creating a content strategy. We're going to be talking about all the details and the tactics and the strategies and all the good stuff, right? But before we do that, I just want to like dive a little deeper and talk about like how you got started into this game. So what led you to get started in this game of like creating content and content strategies for people?
I'm happy to answer all of that, but I want to give you some props on the show that you've created.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Listening today to some episodes, just because this same topic, like so I was listening to your episode on how to write a book, right?
Yeah.
And that same topic obviously can be covered 1,000 ways. 100 different people could cover that.
Sure.
But what I love and what I get is that deeper dive, right? It's that, the guest will say an answer, and it's, what was leading him to, these just topics were coming to him. And what you don't get on other shows is like, okay, well, what's going on in your life that you were attracting all those crazy topics? Like that's just like, that's the question I wanted at. Like, and that's the line of questioning that you don't get on most shows, certainly on business shows, content, marketing shows, things like that. So huge props to you for your being coming through and all of this and making it not only more entertaining and engaging that way, but just learning so much more that way.
Ah, dude, thank you so much. I was at Social Media Marketing World, kind of. I kind of crashed their speaker party. They're probably gonna listen to this. And I'm like, never have that guy speak ever, which would be okay with me. But yeah, it was really fun to crash their speaker party. And I was with hanging out with James Wedmore. Porterfield was there, but I missed her when she was there. Pat Flynn was there, and got to hang out with him and Jill and Josh Stanton, which they're going to come on the show here in a little bit, a couple months or so. But the cool thing is a lot of the people in the audience had been listening to the show, which was really cool, because I was like, I wonder if this show is making a difference in people's lives or people listening. I mean, I know they're listening because we're close to 1,000 downloads and in the audience size of the show so far. But it was really cool to see and meet strangers who I had never, ever met that were not in Dallas. I was in San Diego. And they're like, yo, I loved when you talked about so-and-so and so-and-so. And I was like, oh, shit, people really listen to this thing.
That's awesome. For being, 20-something episodes in, they're up 30 now, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's awesome. It's an amazing feeling. And you and I are similar. It's not this ego thing of, people are listening to me. It's this, like, because you sit there and you do things in a room like you're doing, and for you, solo episodes and everything too. And you just wonder, like, anybody listening? Like, does it matter? Yeah. And when you get that feedback, that's phenomenal. So that's so great.
And I was really surprised to hear kind of that people are really digging the solo shows. They're like, man, it's so refreshing to hear this different take on things. It's really got me thinking, which was kind of what was really coming through me for this coach creator, course creator space, was diving into some of these topics that a lot of people are totally afraid to tackle. And I'm like, fuck it, we'll talk about it, and people are getting value from it, which is really cool.
I love it. Love it, man.
So, dude, enough about my show. Let's dive into you, because this is about you, my friend.
Nice, as it should be. It's about time. Now that I did the obligatory your time. No. Yeah. So, what was the question again?
Yeah, dude. So,
what am I doing?
I believe you fly under the radar a lot. I mean, you did the MAPAC stuff. You've done like big virtual conferences. Like, the fucking content game better than most quote unquote gurus. Like, the fucking game. So we'll get into the tactics. But before we do that, I want to know, like, what led you to getting into this game in the first place? Only weird people do this, by the way. So I want to know, like, how you got into this fucking game.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. Like, and we'll go fast with it for the most part, but it's the content creation aspect, came from, years and years, 28 years now in the video and film space. So movies, corporate events, music videos, short film, all that stuff for ever, right? And that was just from the time I was at some point in high school, no idea why. I was just like, I want to make movies. And so I went and did that for a long time, phenomenal fun. It's an addiction. It's a drug, without a doubt. If it's for you, you're in. And then one day that switched off. But this love, what filled that space was this love and passion really for business and marketing. As strange as that kind of is, even when I was on the film side of things, I was shooting and lighting was my main thing, but then also producing. So the business and logistics side of movies was just as fun and engaging for me as being on set and running camera and all of that, which is it's a weird thing. It's very weird. Those two things would go together. And it was just what drove me and stuff. So one day the movie stuff shut off. Like, there was no passion there for it all, but it's business and marketing. And then, so I really went down that, path a long ways. Just like, I want to be better at this. I want to learn this more. I want to learn sales. I want to learn marketing. I want to dig into this. And so I really set the creation side aside for a while. And that was just a thing that I used to do. But now, and then years ago, I finally started like, okay, well, that's kind of a superpower, because I can create video and content and all of that stuff, and really good, stuff like that. So how do I bring them together, right? And then from me being on camera, kind of creating content, like original content, me talking, teaching, interviewing, all of that, that was a crazy fluke. Working for a production company that I used to work for, I came up with a content marketing idea of just like, we're sitting here with the studio and cameras and all this stuff. Let's use this, start a show, because I found the startup community, and they're in Dallas. And it was like, let's how do I, how do I show up, and really engage with these groups as a marketing tactic, right? Like there could be a potential for our business here and grow.
Sure. And that was Startup Dallas, right?
Startup Dallas, exactly. Yeah. For reasons I don't have the answers to, you cannot find Startup Dallas episodes anywhere.
I found mine the other day. Just to let you know, I found mine.
I bet. Take a look again.
Okay, this was like 2 days ago, so maybe it's changed in 2 days.
It's been strange. So anyway, but that was phenomenal. And so it was one of those like, hey, we should do this show. Let's bring startup folks in here, have this conversation. I mean, nobody else is going to do it. I'll do it. I'll sit here. I had no business being on camera. I had no aspiration to or anything like that. And so I jumped in and did that. We did 83 episodes of Startup Dallas. And that,
which, by the way, I want to give context to this for those who have not seen the show, and maybe they can find them, maybe they can't now. I don't know. It was like a fucking like Oprah level like television set. Like when you walk in,
looked sharp.
Yeah, it was top of the line. Movie screens, couches. Like it was like talk show.
Yeah, it was a nice amazing 3-camera shoot. Yeah. It was great lighting,
right.
All of this stuff. And in fact, I mean, numerous people would walk in. Part of it was an insult because they were obviously had never seen the show. I was like, okay, well, but they would walk in like, oh, whoa, yeah. I wasn't expecting this. I thought you were doing this out of your closet or something. I didn't know what was going on. So yeah, it was great. And that show did so much for me. It flipped a switch on in me. It lit me up. I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. Like that, doing these interviews, I realized in the process, because at the same time I'd made this purposeful decision that I want to be a connector. I want to be an amazing networker. I want to walk into a room and know everyone, or you know what I mean? Like I wanted that. And I was the furthest thing in the world from it. And so I was working to be better at that, going to these networking things, had the show. And I'll tell you, as a side note, with all of this that we talk about today, one of the greatest ways to be a better communicator, even just in real life, is to do these kind of shows. 'Cause I'm sure you're experiencing the same thing. You create this content, you listen to the shows back as much as you usually won't want to listen to your own voice and hear yourself. And you just go, oh my, I sound like that. In fact, I remember the episode with you on Startup Dallas, specifically on how horrible I was at not finishing a sentence. I was yelling at myself, like listening to this thing back. I was like, good grief, man, finish a thought already. So it's a great tool. So all that was coming together. And I realized that this gives me energy. This is life, man. This is amazing. I love this so much. And so when my engagement there at that production company was coming to an end, I knew I had to keep this going. I knew I had to do more of this no matter what, no matter how. So I started this show called The Jason Croft Show. Yep. Yeah. Nice and obnoxious title, like yours there.
Exactly. For those of us who aren't creative enough to come up with a proper name, like, fuck it, we'll just use our names.
Exactly. Mine was pure ego. I just want to say my name a lot. But, so I took, Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, aspect and just said, wait, I'm just going to jump in. I didn't have a studio anymore. I didn't have all this stuff. So what can I do? And I've got to do all of this myself, because Startup Dallas, there was an editor in-house editing this thing and all of that. So that was cake, Yeah. So now I had to do all this myself. So I was like, okay, what's going to make the most, a single camera? Let me do, and it ended up being phenomenal just because it's just so engaging. It's so keeps you watching, right? Like, even though you're still one shot and you're in a vehicle, there's still enough other things going on. And then for me as the interviewer, it was a blast to have, my one track on, listening and engaging with my guest. But then the other one was like, hey, where are we going? Because we never knew where we were going. I was just driving around and, going off places and everything. And it was a blast. So, I think, there's lessons in that I give people all the time on the good and bad from going to that. The good is I jumped in and just started doing another show. So I did 60 something episodes of that. And in both those shows, there's business benefit certainly overall, but just the network, especially at that Startup Dallas series, and then going into really carried all the way through the Jason Croft show, the network of amazing people who are dear close friends to this day.
Yeah.
Yourself included, right? Like
Yeah.
we really engaged. We met at some networking stuff, but hey, come be on the show. Let's talk. Like the people I met during that time, just life-changing,
Yeah. Which is kind of leads me into my next question, which is like, what impact has creating content really had on your life, both personally and professionally?
Yeah. And it's, so here's the good and bad of that, right? On my, it's nothing but positive without a doubt. Because it's allowed me to reach people. I mean, you were talking about it, having somebody coming up to you on the, hey, I've listened to your show. It's an amazing feeling. Had someone, I don't know at all in this world, like, aren't you do that show, don't you? Like it's crazy. And so people will reach out and they know I'm the video guy and they know this. And so it helps in business overall and in networking. But it also helps me, especially in something like, and on my next show, I'm going to do some more of this, like you're doing on these solo episodes. It helps add a filter to everything that you experience in your life, right? Like it becomes, oh, that'll be a good show. That'll be a good lesson to teach, which we all know we learn that lesson so much better if we can teach it to somebody.
Exactly.
And so I said good and bad earlier. The only bad or less than ideal was, jumping into the Jason Croft show without a real business purpose behind it. It's okay that I did it because the other reason to do it and building that network and just keeping me going, like it's just lifeblood to me to do those was great. But I always advise people, if you're jumping in and starting and doing a better job on the next one, what's the business reason? What's the bigger reason here to do this? Because it's a lot of work.
So much. So much.
It's ridiculous. Even an audio only podcast. And then you start adding video, forget about it. It's so much work that you need to have a business benefit to that. And beyond, the pie in the sky, oh, once I get 40 million followers, I'll start making money. It's got to be now. The beauty is that you can design a show that is profitable and, helpful to your business immediately. But that's the good. And then the other,
Yeah. Well, I've been doing this for, December, January, February. We're doing this interview in March, at the beginning of March. So 3.5 months. I can already attach back to this show 18,500 in revenue from this show specifically.
Wow.
Right?
That's beautiful.
Now there's no sponsorships. And I went into the show, I don't know if I ever have sponsors. I don't give a fuck about sponsors. I'm not saying that that's a wrong model or anything like that. I'm just saying that wasn't my intention. This is actually the first time I've ever created content in a way, not the first time I've created content for those who don't know me. I've created content for a hot minute. Right. But for the first time I've created content without an intention to build a following. Like I'm not like doing the show for like, I hope when people listen to it, they see me as an expert, they see me as authority. It's like I've done enough work, like personally up to this point, that I can source my own feelings of authority and recognition and all the goodness.
Right.
Creating the show for the sake of creating a show. And as a result, the byproduct has been, it's building an audience. We're making money from the show. And the only other thing I can say is like, I don't feel this pressure like to perform. Like it's almost become a little bit, because I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to do this for a whole year, 2 episodes a week on a Wednesday and a Sunday. Hell or high water, like I am committed. And by the way, for those listening, it's not fucking easy. There are days where my mind is like, we're 25 episodes in. I mean, we could probably take a break. Let's just skip on Sunday sermon, skip a solo episode, because that thing is a motherfucker to create every week. And I'm like, nope, we're fucking committed. And, I'm up at the late night writing the script and all of that for that. And aligning with the truth sometimes of like, I have no fucking clue I'm going to talk about this week. I hope it comes to me.
But a lot of goodness has really come from that, both personally for me of just like being committed to do the work without attachment to it.
Mhm.
But to your point, I have been very strategic, and you actually have been a big help. I mean, dude, people don't know this, but you were the dude behind the scenes. I had met with you before I even launched this thing, and you helped me figure out, hey, this is how to do it, and this is the equipment you want to use, and this is how we're going to do it. Like, you like helped me totally map out the entire strategy behind the scenes to be able to get this puppy launched, So, dude, thank you so much for
Yes, of course.
tap in and use your gift, because this wouldn't be here without. Well, let me be honest. It probably would be here without you.
Of course.
I'd rather you do it, honestly.
Yeah, it's such an interesting balance, right? To be in that. So you could certainly start a show tomorrow and just want to talk to people, and that's great. I think for me, what I talk about too, with a business reason behind it, is I'm talking to those entrepreneurs who, because it's going to take all that time. It's going to take that commitment that you're talking about doing. And you really do have to commit. It's not like, hey, let me give it a shot,
Exactly.
And it's got to be, even if you're not getting revenue from it, it needs to be incorporated. It needs to layer in. It needs to, this equals either more business or connection or down the road. And you don't have to do any of it by any means. But when you realize what you have, and you've got, we all have essentially a TV station at our disposal here that people would have killed for 40 years ago. And you don't be afraid to use that and be in that mindset with that. Have a commercial for yourself, even if it's as simple as you're, sending people to your Instagram, to connect, grow that audience, because the more they're engaged with you and having that conversation, getting them to your shift group, the more they're engaged with you, the more people you're going to reach.
Yeah. Dude, and the other thing I didn't expect. So I came also into this pretty much with a little bit of lens of a jaded marketer. I'll be honest with that one. Because, dude, I've had friends, I've had you, I've had all these people that have started podcasts. I've had, Chris Cerrone in my life, who was like doing podcasting from his closet before that was the cool thing to do, and generating millions of downloads. Like, he did the podcast for Tony Hawk and for Misha Tate, and like, he's an OG in the podcasting game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd seen this whole journey of podcasting. I was like, yeah, whatever. Anybody with a microphone can go to a podcast. Not that big of a deal. Right. So when I went to San Diego, though, what was interesting is the players in the game actually had this is my story, by the way. My story is the players in the game had another level of respect and admiration for me, because I had this body of work. And so I've learned players respect players, right? So they can just see, like, you're in the fucking game. Welcome to the game, bro. Like, so there's a new level of like admiration and respect and trust that we can then dialogue about. And so that was an interesting thing. And then for those who weren't the quote unquote players in the game, they're like, you have a podcast? I'm like, you could have one too. It's really not that complicated. Like, there was a whole nother positioning element.
Pick up your phone and talk into
exactly. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I've heard this and I get it. Like, but me just being the jaded marketer and understanding this game and understanding podcasting before it was cool. We're talking about 2014, 2015. I remember reading about it in 2011 when it was just like the podcast being, and people were doing podcasting back then. So I came into it jaded. So I never really understood, like, man, it is a really powerful positioning piece, just because it demonstrates you're playing the game. So for those listening, like, if you're a coach, if you're a course creator, like, I don't care what avenue, whether it's a podcast or whether it's a YouTube show or whether it's a blog or whatever it is, or books, like, man, pick whatever your platform is and whatever your strength aligns with that, and go all in on that and be consistent with that shit. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Shout out to a buddy of mine, Ali Mirza, their marketer in Dallas. Awesome guy. I was watching a little clip from him, and he talked about the best way to go about, picking that avenue is just play to your strengths. What are you comfortable with? And if you're a phenomenal writer and that is your sweet spot, write all day long. And, we're in a visual medium and podcasts and all of that stuff. That's great. And you can have some things created, but own that lane, because that's what's going to keep you committed and going and over and over and over and meeting those deadlines.
Yeah. The other thing that I've learned about this game too, is when we're picking the medium, it also kind of depends on the business model. You know, for somebody who's, let's say they're on YouTube. I mean, YouTube's the second largest search engine. So people are really going there for how to do this, how to do that. And so part of your content strategy needs to be in the how-to or the reviews or something. I mean, you could do the vlogging thing that's just lifestyle. This is going to be a lot longer play, I think, to build subscribers in today's day and age. So that was a thing that I took into consideration, because I'm pretty good on film. But for me, podcasting became the medium for me, because what I talk about is not bite size. Like it takes a bit of time to really chew on and articulate and communicate. So this medium, specifically podcasting, gave me the ability to chew on some of these heavier concepts. And that was a really big reason why I chose to come into podcasting specifically. Yeah.
That's really smart. And that another thing that plays into that too, sometimes, especially if you're kind of agnostic, like I don't really care, I'll do any of them, is to go where your audience is, your ideal client, your the people you really want to connect with. Where are they? And go there, you know?
Another reason I became podcaster.
It's great. And I've had to force myself on this next show coming up, because the other shows that I've done, they were always, video first, optimized for video, and then I released a podcast version as well, strip the audio and kick that out. And I'm really wanting this new show to be podcasts first, just audio medium, probably not even, it's really hard for me not to record video. And only because of, I know what it really takes in the workflow and all of that. And also some feedback that I'm getting from other folks on comfortability, right? On some folks, prefer having, no camera involved, and they'll have this deep conversation if it's just audio, right? So playing with that.
Awesome. Why do you believe every coach and course creator must have a content strategy and be creating content?
It's just the world we live in. I mean, even if you hate it, too bad, suck it up. It really is that way, because exactly that experience that you described in San Diego is our world now. That's life. If you are on the screen, even as easy as it is to get there, like you talked about, if you are on that screen, you have authority. If you've written a book, you have authority. And we all know logically that it doesn't necessarily mean that. And some people, and if you don't have authority, if you don't know what you're talking about, and you show up to these places, you'll be found out, sure, but it's the price of entry. Most of us do have something to say. Most of us are an authority in something. And you really have to have these proof points these days in order to play the game and to get in front of the audience that you want to get in front of, to have the clientele that you want to have. Even if, let's say you're a coach or a speaker and nobody ever listens to an episode of your show, reads your book, any of that, they want to be able to check the box. They want to be able to say, oh, he's got this show. Awesome. It's professional enough looking that it looks like I can go to his YouTube page and I can see, 50 videos with a thumbnail there that looks professionally done, and never click on them and go, oh man, he must know what he's doing. Right. Or she must be really smart because look at all the people she's interviewing, it's just the price of entry. And that's the main surface level, like, too bad, you got to do it. Diving deeper, and the real benefits are, wow, I mean, what you build then from it, because like we spoke about earlier, you get better the more you talk about, the more people you talk about. Episodes like you're doing with helping people actually during that podcast, they're coming on for that, someone in shift to come on and get their problem solved. You're better because of that. and you're just doing what you do, right? And then if you can now put that in front of the world and say, oh, this is what I do. Because I mean, I struggled with that forever back in just movie making days and all of this as a freelancer. It's like, I'm great once I show up, once somebody actually knows I'm great. Like, I do a great job, but I was horrible at marketing myself and getting, in front of the right people at the right time to finally get them to go, oh yeah, you're good at what you do. And that was what I always struggled with. And now we're living in the time we have that opportunity, especially for coaches, speakers, folks like that, who can demonstrate their authority so readily and on a consistent basis.
Yeah. I found consistency is a huge, huge thing. And I learned this from Justin Brooks, not consistency, but he made a post one day. So shout out to Justin Brooks with adskills.com. But he made this post one day talking about like series on Netflix. And usually by the time they get, like accepted by the mainstream culture, they're like 3 or 4 seasons in, right? It's not usually they go, the good shows, by the way, right? Like the good shows, they'll go like, maybe it really is like 2nd, 3rd season before it seems like the main, like you're going to have your early adopters who are going to be in season 1, right? But the main culture is really coming on board for 3 or 4. So what would have happened for these huge hit shows if they would have put out season 1, then be like, fuck, nobody listened to it. I guess we're just done. But instead, they kept allowing whatever their why was, whatever their vision was, whatever source was coming through them to create that medium and all of that. They kept it going, right? And that was really, for me, I was like, man, what a beautiful illustration for the power of consistency in the game of just like content marketing.
Oh yeah. And again, Ollie the other day put out something. He's just reached that point of like monetization on his YouTube channel. And it wasn't like, hey, I made $100, look at me. But it was like, here's how easily, number one, because he's got like 2,000 something followers on YouTube, and there's revenue coming in, right? So it's like that was one lesson, but the other lesson was he was getting the breakdown of where all his traffic was coming from, and his most trafficked video that made him the most of that $100 was from 2017. Yeah, because he's been creating this all along, and people find him, and then they find your other stuff, and the algorithm kicks it back up. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Now, dude, a lot of people in this game talk about authority and expert positioning or building a celebrity brand. So I know content's a big part of this, but is like you have to produce high quality, you got to go big, or can people just start simple? And it really is just about just showing up and doing the work.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we all have examples of that. I mean, right before we got going, I was like, at least let me put up a light. I got to put up a light. I got to do something. And there's some minimums in there for sure that just there's that perception on the other end. Once somebody's listening, if you know what you're talking about, awesome. You're going to build an audience. But if you can have the minimums, have a decent mic, throw up a light, have something that people help those people who want to watch you, want to like you, want to be, root for you, help them by giving them some of these materials so that it's a bare minimum of quality. They're not struggling to hear you or understand you or your guest or whatever that is. Have some of those things in place. And the more you keep going and you level up, it's only going to help you from that perception standpoint. But every, Ramit Sethi, everybody who's huge and going out there, they talk about their beginning horrible, talking into a phone version of whatever they were doing. And they've all left them up. You can go find them because they know the value of that. They know how valuable it was just to start and get going.
I know with the show, I look at it this way. Like, when I try to do pretty good with the audio production quality. I've been experimenting with mics, and the room and we've traveled, and there's been some issues, but I'm like, fuck it. It is what it is. Yeah. And I'm just going to continue getting better and better and better. And even since we do the YouTube version of this too, there's been times where, we're traveling Romania. The only time I could do it and record it was in the kitchen that looked like a bathroom. But I'm like, fuck it. The lighting's not great. The background sure as hell is not great, but it is what it is, and welcome to season 1 of the Anthony John Amick podcast. We'll see what season 2 is going to look like, and just allow it to just grow and level up as we go along.
Absolutely. And just imagine if you had waited, right,
Yeah.
until everything was just right, you still wouldn't have started your show yet. You
Yeah,
wouldn't have had that experience in San Diego. You wouldn't have had like
exactly.
it's so tough for folks, and I understand it, that wanting things just right,
Yeah.
aspect. But you gotta, there's so much value in just going. And that's why, I talked about on the Jason Croft show, like I regret not having certain things in place, but I never regret going and doing it because it is just phenomenal.
Awesome. So how would you define content marketing? If somebody's like, well, what the fuck is content marketing? How would you define it for them?
So a couple things for that. Simple answer is just about any form of content, written, audio, video, that teaches something, that expresses your expertise or helps somebody find an answer to something. That is, its intent is usually ultimately to drive them back towards your company, your business, your brand. And it's really been taken up by most folks in the sense of, hey, let's help folks, even if it's for free, put out content, because they're going to see that we know what we're talking about. So when that problem arises, they need help with it, they're going to come to us. Right.
Makes sense.
And that's a great definition and a great strategy to go with. I've, in the last couple of years, have really turned that whole medium on its head, or podcasting and shooting videos and things like that on its head, in try to explain to people that it's not just about content marketing. We know podcasting and YouTube videos and all that are that, right? They perform well there, but they're sales tools. Like, you can utilize these directly as sales tools. They don't have to be this super long-term, eventually we'll get somebody to buy from us. We can go interview our ideal clients tomorrow because nobody says no to an interview, and have that conversation and build that relationship right away while running an ad for ourselves during that content. And I know, people are probably, rolling their eyes but yeah, I'm a capitalist pig. That's who I am. Right. And what I love in all this is that's what I love about my approach and a lot of folks I connect with, is that those things aren't mutually exclusive. Making a profit in all of this and doing great things in the world and connecting people. My buddy Jonathan King, he's the one, I'm going to start this next show with, Strategy in Action. We're very aligned that way, that's our juice, is connecting people, and helping and figuring things out and just solving people's problems with strategies and marketing and all of this. But yeah, we're going to make some money from it too, all along the way. And that's why it's a job, and that's why it's a skill set. And there's no shame in any of that. Right.
Totally. Now, I want to address something, because I feel like a lot of coaches, course creators, people creating content, sometimes they're just like a talking head. And sometimes I feel like they're just talking to fucking talk, and they're creating content for the sake of creating fucking content. So where's that balance between, having that personality and doing what you do, but really finding that line, that center line that I'm looking for to create content that's actually, as you said, going to be a sales tool, or that's going to shift people's mindsets, or it's going to like help you, like it's going to be efficient. It's not just content, but
right.
Content.
Yeah. I think it's a couple of things. One is having, multi-layered benefits to the shows, right? So like someone could just consume this great entertaining interview, right, and get something out of just hearing this person's story. And then there'll be a certain group that are like, oh, I need help with that. And there'll be a certain group who go and follow you on social, and eventually you go help them. So having all those in place, so it's not just a me fest, and
Sure.
just like, hey, look at me, buy from me. But it is tough to find that balance sometimes, because this is a weird thing. What you and I are doing is a weird thing. Like it's weird to go and put yourself, especially for me, like I'm like, as much as I joke, like I am egoless enough that like, I'm not one of these, like, I should really be on camera. I should really, be in front of, like, I'm not that person. And so that's why it's still so funny to me, in how I can see how weird and strange it is to have a part of my brain go, you know what, I'm going to make a video tomorrow, 5 ways to get the most out of an event using video, and to stand there by myself in a co-working space and make a video and then put that out and watch it back to make sure it looks good. Like there's a weird, like there has to be at least a little bit of that narcissism, a little bit, like to think that you have something to say, right? And then unfortunately, some people stop there. That's a brick wall for some people.
Yeah.
Right? Because like, oh, who am I to say that? And like, oh, people are going to think I'm narcissistic, you know. And for me, I can stand outside of that because I'm not that, and so I know it's weird, but there's value on the other end. There's value for me. There's value for the audience. There's value, you know.
See, I come at it from a little different perspective, which is like somebody's like, well, I don't want to be a narcissist. I'm like, well, fuck it. I'm a narcissist because is if this is serving my vision to be a narcissist in this moment, fuck it. I'm a narcissist. And this is kind of where we get to kind of dance and figure out, well, is being a narcissist serving me? And we can look at our fruit to see if it is empowering me to create the vision that wants to come through me. Or is it being detrimental and I'm being an asshole and I'm being arrogant and I'm hurting those around me? Well, then I probably should stop and reassess. But it's kind of knowing, you know, as a human, we have all these potentialities. We could be the lover or the warrior or the asshole or the narcissist or the bitch or the whatever. And
all in a day, too.
All in a day. And there's times and place for all of those. There's a time and place to be the asshole. Like if somebody was hurting my daughter, I would hope I would embody my inner asshole and help her. You know what I mean? Right. So it's interesting when we try to say, no, narcissist, bad. Never.
Yeah, just a blanket statement.
Just a blanket statement, never. Rather than having a little bit more gray space to stand in the pocket and be like, well, maybe in this moment for me being on this show or me creating content, maybe I need to channel a little bit of my, you know, my narcissist, a little bit of Steve Jobs or my inner Conor McGregor or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
Figure out what that dance is to allow us to be in a place of power. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think you and I both, I mean, I love the gray. Like that's
right.
And so that's part of just I've just always been, I'm fine with ambiguity, right? Like, okay, whatever. I don't know if this is this way, you know, so it makes it easier to dance. Right.
Yeah.
That way. And but yeah, that's fun because you do get locked in, and I understand the concern if you make this commitment, like you've talked about making a commitment for this show. I'm going to do 2 episodes a week, no matter what. And one's going to be a solo, and I'm going to talk about this. And a lot of people worry too. I've given talks and people ask this, like how, you know, beyond, I can think of like 2 or 3 episodes beyond that, how in the heck? But it goes back to what I was talking about before. It's like all of a sudden you have this filter that happens that you just like everything you experience in your life, it's filtered in this way of like, oh, wow, that's an episode. That's a lesson. Wow, look what I just did. And we all see good and bad versions of that. Some people are masters at that. You know, you have masters like Seth Godin, right? Who kicks out a little blog post every single day to his email list. And so much is what's going on and they experience and they kick out. And we see other ones who are like, that's a stretch. You're just kicking some stuff out, right? And you just have to be your own inner critic with that to know and to recognize and be honest enough to go like, okay, this is dog crap. This is not going to serve anybody. Let me get real here and dig something up. Maybe something I'm afraid to share. Let's talk. Let's get into this, you know?
Yeah. Pat Flynn, smartpassiveincome.com. He spoke at the event I was at in San Diego, and he shared something that was really good. That's kind of in this vein, which was like, if you're struggling to create content, then go to Amazon.com, find some of the best-selling books within your niche, within your industry, look at their table of contents, and then whatever their chapter title names are, you should probably be creating your version of that type of content. Like those are the types of questions that you should be answering. Those are the types of content that you can.
Yeah.
And that was a really good little like piece of like, boom, here's a way to go find content when you're like, I don't know what to say. Because there are days where you're like, fuck, I don't know. I don't know what to say today. You know, for me, I'm a little weird. Like I just align with the truth. I'm like, I don't know. I'll go do a breathing exercise. I'll go float in a float tank. I'll go meditate. I'll journal.
Mm-hmm.
And all 4 of those things for me, I find the answer through just doing nothing, which sounds crazy to somebody else.
No, it's
it works for me.
Yeah. I'm in the middle of it with Richard Dott's books and a couple of others
Nice.
that I've been going through too, of just for the first time embracing that nothingness, embracing that stopping and be quiet. I've done a version of meditation for so long and stuff, and I'm finally just now really just being quiet in. It's very hard to explain, but experiencing what you're talking about and just stopping everything for real and sitting there, and there's so much value in that. But yes, tactics like Pat Flynn's talking about, without a doubt, and that's if you can't go talk to people, can't talk to your ideal audience.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. Like, just talk to folks. What are they struggling with? You'll get material really quickly.
So good. Now, dude, I find a lot of coaches, course creators, they're totally winging it when it comes to their content strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I also know, like, several of my friends who are 7-figure, 8-figure, like, income earners in the coaching course creator space, they have like a written content plan that they're following in regards to their content marketing. I mean, I have one for myself for this show. So what are the steps that you found for really developing like a content marketing plan?
Yeah, so I'm finally doing that for this new show.
Nice.
Because I've been in the winging it camp for a long time, and there's a superpower in that, of course. That I can show up to an interview, show up to a show, and like, hey, let's just go, let's figure this out, and let's have an amazing. I'm gonna. I show up to interviews that way. People ask, hey, what are some of the questions? What are this? I'm like, I don't know, man. We're gonna start talking, and what you say is going to inspire the next thing. And our buddy Julian, right? We would always joke about that because he, in the beginning too, especially like he had his list of questions. He was just like, "You don't have a list of questions? Like, what are you talking about? That's crazy,"
Sure.
And it is just different approaches and stuff. And I've gotten better at having at least a goal. Like, hey, let's have a topic. Let's discuss this. Like today's topic. We're talking, having this structure and the questions that you have. And yet we can go from there. We can riff and we can go.
Totally,
and all that.
100%.
So putting that together now, certainly, and part of that, there's kind of like, it can get really, really in depth, I guess, because at a high level, it's a lot of what we've been talking about for a content strategy, which is what's your big goal first, right? Why are you doing this thing in the first place? And that's going to dictate these other things. It's going to, if I'm trying to I want to connect with people and potential clients and all of that. So, okay, I'm going to do a podcast and it's going to be interview based. So if it's this, I want to structure them around this way. So you get your why, your overall structure and everything. And then, it's everything from, I don't know how detailed you want to,
We can go as detailed as you want to go, brother.
Go in all of this. But, I mean, it's really deciding, your style, your structure, the voice, as you get into like, okay, I'm decided I'm going to do a podcast, right? So now what's the structure of that? And this really is valuable. And I have done this in the past, is really, structure these things and following a format, right? So it doesn't have to be anybody else's format. It could be your made up, this is what I'm going to do, but I'm going to have this format of the show. I'm going to have a professionally done intro, then it's going to be a host intro, then the interview, and just line that out and follow that 10, 20 episodes and see how that feels, right?
So I'm doing the same thing. I created my own format and I like it so far. And people seem to like it.
Awesome. And that's the thing too. It's like there's value. It's just like you talked about, the committing to the episodes themselves and that consistency, which is a massive thing. If you talk to anybody who's built any kind of audience, like they will just point to that over and over and over again of what's helped them build that. But even then, for if you are doing an interview, the other part of that content strategy is you need a system for how are you going to reach out to these guests. I would suggest from experience, now doing 150 plus shows, whatever, do have at least an outline, a structure, a common list of questions, because what I found too with a lot of guests is that it just helps them feel more comfortable, right? I would have people ask a lot of time, like, okay, well, what are some of the questions? And I would almost take it as an offense, like, well, I'm not gonna tell you, like, I don't have them. I don't want them. That's too, stagnant or whatever it is. But to have those, at least as a starting point,
Sure.
It's just a comfort level for them, even though once they get going, especially for folks who've never done it before.
Yeah.
And once they get going, everything's rocking and everything's good. If it's solo style, still have your, a content calendar, like you alluded to, is a big deal with all of this. Whether that's, I'm going to have these guests on these days. If it's a solo show, I'm going to cover these topics over the next, 6 weeks or so. For me, it's always been a point of stress and constraint and all of this to have, structured content. And I have to fight with that. I see the value. I never once have ever argued the value of all of those, never put them together. I'm finally doing that now because I know the value of it to really build something and not just wing it is around this consistency and having this content calendar. And now that I'm doing the show with Jonathan, he's in Spain. So we've got time zones, we've got guests, we've got topics, we've got a show to build. We've got all these layers of complexity to this that I better have something down.
Sure.
We better figure that out. And so even if it's hard for you, the idea of that, I promise you on the other end is comfort, because once you force yourself to do it and you've got it down, then all the mini stresses stop of like, oh crap, it's Wednesday, I've got to have a show out tomorrow, kind of things. All of that stops because and you get in that rhythm, and then it just becomes,
Awesome. So we've talked about like some mistakes. We've talked about people not being consistent. We've talked about not having a plan. What are some other like common pitfalls, around content marketing that people make that you've seen?
Certainly lack of consistency. I've made them, seen other people make them. I've been an audience member to those folks who just like, where'd they go? Right.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So what was your experience as an audience member? So this is kind of funny. So Pat shared this because he's talking about super fans and Blue Raven fans at the event I was at in San Diego. And he shared like he was a day late or something on one episode. And, if you guys don't know Pat, he's like a content machine. Like that guy pumps out some content, right? And he has for many, 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 many years, millions of downloads and views and all that. Anyway, so something happened. He was like a day late getting out an episode. He's, done thousands of episodes before. And he gets this email and it's like, what the fuck, Pat? Where's episode number 1, whatever? By the way, love your show. It was just really funny. And he was talking about like, man, people like start looking for these episodes when you get in that rhythm and you've been so consistent. Right.
And that's the beauty. That's like the blessing and curse, right? Because it's like, that's what you want. You want fans like that, right, that are showing up. The curse part is like, it becomes, you better do it.
Right.
Number one, you have to do it to build up those raving fans.
Sure.
And then you better stay with it, right? It keep going. But it's really, ultimately, I think it's a net positive because just like you and I have experienced, it takes having that some kind of constraint, even if it's self-imposed, having some kind of constraint, and that comes in the content calendar, comes into planning, all of that, to keep yourself going, because the value. It's the most common analogy, but it's like working out, right? It's so easy to just not do it that day, and then all of a sudden it's been 4 weeks and you haven't even done a sit-up or whatever, and it's so easy to do the exact same thing. And this last show that I did was just wrought with that. I would go months without, an episode, and then, get back to it and do all of this, and never built up any kind of, audience or consistency with that to any great extent because of that. I felt that big time.
Yeah. Well, I can talk to the consistency piece a little bit too. So Google had done some research and I've been trying to find it, but essentially I've called this the 7-11-4 principle. And in that, I don't know what they called it. It was 7-11 something. I don't remember. Anyway, so I'll just kind of give you the context. So the context was, is that like, hey, they did a study and they want to know, what does it take to get people to like, or to know, like, and trust you, right? And so what they found through research was like, if you spend 7 hours with somebody, then that like and know trust factor is like to a place where they feel comfortable, they want to buy your shit. Or if there's 11 touch points, same thing, they'll buy your shit. Or if they meet you in 4 different locations. So when I read that,
oh yeah, I did. Okay.
Like, oh, okay. So if somebody, spends 7 hours consuming my content, that's like taking them through their threshold of that like, know, and trust factor. If they're having 11 touch points, they hear me on a podcast, they hear me on a guest podcast, they see me on YouTube, maybe they get an email, maybe they see my Facebook post, all of those are touch points. And then the 4, like meeting somebody in 4 different places. So we can't really do that virtually, but if we take selfies and we're like, I'm at Starbucks, I'm with this person or that person, if they have a commonality, I would assume like it would sink into their conscious mind a bit where they're like, oh, I've been to Starbucks. Oh, he eats that type of food. Oh, and it again, it increases that like, know, and trust.
It's like the next best kind of, yeah.
Exactly. So that's why the consistency piece is really important scientifically, is because it does increase that like, know, and trust factor. And I think a lot of people, when they come to this game, of course they're looking to make money, right? But they're like, think it's going to happen overnight. Like, I make content, people are going to buy my shit. And you're like,
right.
No, they're going to be jaded as fuck first, because a monkey can create content from the palm of their hand in today's marketplace. So they're going to be like, you're gonna be 6 months? You're going to be here in a year? And there's a whole journey of just like, we talked about this in my Shift community where we talked about you're the lighthouse. Jesse Elder talked about this concept, but Jonathan was teaching it, where it's like you're the lighthouse and your job is you have all these ships, your target market at sea, right? And you have to just keep putting out the content, which is ultimately keeping the lighthouse on. So they're going to make their way to the lighthouse, to shore. Yeah. And as a result, once they get to shore, however long it takes them on their journey, some people are quicker than others. Eventually, if we're solving a relevant problem for them, they'll buy our shit.
I love that analogy. I saw that episode that you guys were talking through that and stuff. I love that, because it just is like, that's the price of entry. Because we talk about how easy and simple it is to sit there and do this, and anybody can make a podcast tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's the hard part. Consistent quality, ongoing content. And I think that knowledge has postponed this latest show that I'm about to do for so long, because I know what it takes to really do it. And I wasn't interested in, doing it just because like, hey, it's hot today, let me go out. And I know that I don't have the bandwidth over the next 2 weeks to do anything. And it's going to be, I wasn't interested in all of that. So, and that's a balance too, because you don't want to ever just like keep putting it off. It's at some point you have to commit, but it's that full commitment, right?
For sure. So let me ask this question. So I know personally creating content, it can be hard at times. It can be very difficult. And I think a lot of coaches and course creators, they make the mistake of thinking when they get into this game, or they start whatever they're starting, YouTube show, podcasting, blogging, Facebook strategy, Facebook group, whatever their strategy is, doesn't matter to me. They think like, well, the content should just come to me. And if it doesn't, then they maybe believe that there's something wrong with them or they're broken. So that hasn't been my experience of creating content. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth. Other times it does flow, right? But at other times the struggle is super fucking real. So how does somebody like get inspiration to keep going? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. First off, I think it's one of those, the analogy to writing, right? Like that people have that same thought, and I forgot who talked about it, a lot was, and maybe it was kind of Steven Pressfield certainly show up. Yeah. And just sit there and do it. I think Stephen King even, talks about this too. It's like, no, you don't sit around and wait for, inspiration. You sit down at the same time every day and you write, because that's your job, and you figure, and even, yes, that's hard and you do it, but it's that similar approach. At this time every day, I'm going to create, and it is that work, and it's that process. Now you can put those things in place that are going to trigger those thoughts and help you find inspiration and help you, go down a track and stuff, and be purposeful in consuming some of that stuff. But it's that commitment that I'm going to start writing something. and if nothing's there, and I say writing, an outline, a script or anything,
Sure.
like I'm going to start talking and see what's there and find it and start over and fix it. But it is showing up and just doing the work of it, and an ongoing thing. Have it, I've got my Evernote list of, different ideas, and it's so gigantic right now because for the longest time, for a couple of years, James Altucher's deal of like every morning, 10, just write a list of 10 things, brainstorm 10 things. I did that for so long. I've created videos off of that and
Nice.
blog posts out of that, just sit there and do something. Just like, sometimes it would be a list of 10 lists to create, right? And then I had that to go back to. And on those mornings, like, oh yeah, that's a good one. Let me think of 10 ideas for this, and just brainstorming. Number one, it's a muscle. And so your brain starts operating that way faster and faster and more. It is kind of that flywheel effect. Once you kick it and get it going, it really does, your world kind of processes that way.
I know for me, it was a big kind of like mindset shift, but it was also like almost an identity shift. So for me growing up, I grew up in a blue collar family. So the idea of work was very physical. Like you go out and you earn your day's wages, right? So, which is great. I have a crazy good work ethic, but the problem with it for me is I never really connected the dots. As a coach, as a course creator, part of the work, part of being the professional versus the amateur is sitting down at the blank screen and the blinking cursor and creating something. Like that's work. That's like, you talked about the price of admission for this game. Like that is the price paid. That is part of the work. It's not just coaching. It's not just creating a new course or whatever. Like part of the work, I think really the real work as a coach or course creator, especially for building a legitimate business and having leads and sales, is creating the fucking content or creating the sales pages. It's sitting down and learning how to create the content, man. It's a big
tedious. Yeah. My film professor, Andy Anderson, used to quote, I think it was William Goldman, who would talk about screenwriting and filmmaking. Screenwriting is hard. Not like painting a picture is hard.
Yeah.
Like coal mining is hard. Like it's hard work. Like it's physical, like you are exhausted kind of thing, Yeah.
So good. Let's transition into something a little bit differently. So if somebody has a limiting belief right now, they're like, I want to create content, but who am I to say whatever I want to say? I mean, who's going to listen to me? I mean, there's so many other people creating content on the exact same thing. Why do I need to go contribute to the noise? So how does somebody make their content unique so they can stand out from everybody else in the marketplace?
A few different ways to do that. One is really identifying, because you touched on it first and foremost, that limiting belief aspect of it. If you feel like you don't have something to say, well, then don't say anything. Number one, maybe you don't. I think that's rare, because if you're having this calling and this feeling to go and create something, there's something there for you, right? If you are just doing it because other people have told you to and you think you should and you're supposed to, that's like, like if you think you have to be on TikTok because it's something new that came out, well, no to all of it, right? So it goes back to what's the real benefit to go in and do it? Well, it's to get more clients for my business and get my expertise out there. Okay, well then at some level you think you have an expertise because you've started a business or you're doing this. So what is that? Oh yeah, I do pretty well at this, but only for, plumbers. Awesome. Talk to them. Make a show around that. And that's how you break through the noise. That's how you differentiate yourself. Whatever that is that you're doing for your business, like align with that, no matter how boring you think it is. And I think that's a trap that a lot of us fall into is that, oh yeah, but that's just that thing. Of course, that's easy, right? You and I have had that conversation a lot.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's simple. Everybody knows that. Well, no, they don't. You know it.
Exactly.
And there's a world of people out there who would love to know it. And so it's figuring that out. And then there is a level of, if you are so either not only camera shy, but just so terrified of putting yourself out there because you don't believe that you're quite the expert yet. You just started your business, whatever that may be. Well, then be that reporter model, teach as you learn something, right? Because you're in the middle of all of this. And if you're just starting in a business, that's the beauty of the interview process. This kind of has a twofold answer, because on one side, that's the beauty of it, is that you can provide this content and interview those folks who are, quote unquote, the experts right now. I would caution you, that's the other part of this, in only doing that, because I'd fallen in that trap too. It's just like, oh yeah, please tell me more, expert, and being that person on camera instead of, hey, we're two experts having this conversation, or I'm coming to this person to learn something. I want to get this nugget out, because you do that 40 times on camera, all of a sudden you're the expert. Both a lot more than you did before, but in that viewer's eyes, absolutely, you're the expert talking to the experts. And it's just a matter of being purposeful in that. So even if you're so worried, and I would encourage you to work with someone like AJ to get over that. But if you're so worried about that you're not enough to put out something different and unique, at least take that approach with it.
So good. So good. And I was at a small event this past weekend. I think I've told you, it was at the Screw Live. It was Jill and Josh Stanton of Screw the 9 to 5. It's her live event. And she said something she said something from the stage. It wasn't to me. It was to the whole group of 170 of us, or however many there. But she said, content is cool, but engagement is the queen, and she rules the fucking house. And I was like,
awesome.
Jill Stanton, you fucking genius. Damn right she does.
I love that. I love that.
I'm curious what your thoughts are, is how does somebody go about creating engagement? Because there's a lot of truth to that. Like, you can create the best content, best podcast, best YouTube. But if you're not having that engagement, nobody's going to be seeing that content due to how the algorithms are serving content on all the platforms. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. I'm hoping to answer that with with this show that we're launching, with Strategy in Action, because it's really, so our mindset with it is not, hey, we're going to launch a show. We're going to launch a podcast. It's called Strategy in Action. Well, no, we're launching a consulting community tribe, like this group around strategy and action. Podcast is one of our tools.
Sure.
So is a Facebook group.
Nice.
And so is being in person, meeting, and so coming at it that way, it's inherently and the way that we're structuring all of that is inherently has that engagement in it. It's ripe for engagement, right? And putting those things in place so that, and when we talk about building the structure of a show, for instance, like build that engagement in. That can be anything from, hey, hit me up on Twitter to ask, here's my guest on the next show. Hit me up on Twitter. And if you've always wanted to ask someone in this position these questions, hit me up now. Have a Facebook group where that guest comes on live for 5 or 10 minutes and says, hey, I'm going to be on the show. What would you love to ask me, or whatever? Or, hey, I was just on this last episode. This was fantastic. Build those engagements through there as much as possible. Plan out a live city tour, Again, that's the world we live in. And that doesn't have to be, I'm filling up stadiums. That can be, I'm going to be at this restaurant in Toronto. Anybody out there wants to meet up? Let's do it. And like all of a sudden you build those kind of things in, and that takes you, because again, we live, it's a crazy thing. We're still wired in our minds from being little kids watching the television, and those are the celebrities on there. We're still wired that way, to where we see somebody on camera over and over. they're a celebrity. You react differently to them. So you have some live meetup like that, and you're just a dude and you're hanging out and some other people come up. There's that feeling. I've watched people have that recognition of me, from being on the show.
Yeah.
But more than that, like I've felt it over and over again, like, oh man, that's that guy. I've been watching him forever. Like, oh, there she is. Oh man, she's, and we're just wired that way and so with that engagement, it just heightens everything when you've put this content out as this expert, and then you finally meet in person, whether that's a client relationship or that's, hey, I'd love for you to share this show out with more people, and you're in front of them like that. All those things can just skyrocket and just amplify what you're trying to do.
Yeah, one of my good friends and clients, Subi Zimmerman, she's like a genius at this. Usually when she travels, she'll just put out to her Instagram audience, hey, I'm going to do a Subi meetup. That's what she calls it. And I'm going to be at so-and-so. Let me know if you want to come. And then she'll 30 people will show up, 20 people will show up. And that wasn't like happening from day one. It's just kind of come from her doing the work and building the audience. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that she does really cool that anybody can do is when people are engaging with the content, she goes a step further and sends them a little voice memo, not to everybody, just whoever she feels inclined to, in the direct messages of Instagram, or she'll send them a video, and that's
personalized to them. And,
exactly. And
genius.
Just simple stuff like, hey, thanks for liking the post, and thanks for your comment about so and so, whatever they said. Mm-hmm. What was your biggest takeaway or something, and for the person receiving it, they're like, oh my God, Subi Z just sent me this video. Holy shit. They're like fangirling, you know what I mean?
Fans for life.
Exactly.
Right? You meet someone in person like that, you get an engagement like that. How many people are you going to go tell and share with that, right? Who are, I had Andrew Warner from Mixergy, phenomenal guy, awesome guy. Like, you follow Instagram, whatever, on there. I sit there right over to my buddy Raj. We both listen to his show all the time. I'm like, oh, look at this. This is cool, and we know it doesn't matter that you know the game and all of it, or know Sue so well. There's not this kind of like crazy otherworld,
not at all,
celebrity aspect at all. And yet it still triggers those things. It's just the way we're wired. And it takes this much effort. And that's the thing. What you're getting at with all of this too is being purposeful with it. Yep. And part of that, besides making the decision, oh, I'm going to do this, is almost like the content calendar approach. Like, I'm going to make sure that every Instagram post that I put out, I pick 5 people, and I have and being purposeful with that.
Yeah. One of the things Sue talks about in her 3 Keys webinar, that it helped her create was being proactive versus reactive in engagement, because a lot of people are very reactive. They make the post and then they spend
and they sit and wait.
Exactly. Or they're like checking refresh.
Right.
And Sue and her entire team, they block out time in their calendar for engagement. And so they have their content calendar and all of that, but there is a certain part of their day, whatever that flow looks like, where it's like, okay, it's my turn to go in and engage with people. And that's how they're being very proactive. And people are like, well, I don't have time for that. Well, you have to block that shit out and schedule that shit out so it happens.
Yeah.
Otherwise, social media is running you. You're not running social media.
Right. So. I love that so much. I never even thought about it in that way. I've always thought about that reactive version, right? Like, even though I'm proactively putting out content and I'm looking to engage and be purposeful with that, like, yeah, who's to say you can't start that engagement?
Exactly. And Pat Flynn, he talked about the same thing. He called it the what's up, right? Where when he walks every day by himself, and I don't know how long he walks for, it is what it is. But during that walk time, that's his time when he's going to go in and find a few people that he's going to go send that little what's up message. It's like, hey, Pat here, saw you engage on the content. What's up, man?
That's cool.
That's all it takes. Like, it's just being, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I love that.
Awesome, brother. Well, how often should somebody post fresh content? What do you think?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm very much the school of thought, Gary Vee, Grant Cardone. You cannot post too much. It doesn't exist. The world we live in, you can never post too much, right? Now, what's enough? That's you got to find it. You got to find that audience. You got to find that, because you got to live in that sweet spot of cadence that you're going to be able to commit to and stay
Sure.
consistent with.
Sure.
It'd be awesome if you can kick out 3 episodes of a podcast every single week. That's great. Most people can't do that.
Yeah. I remember, when you and I were strategizing this whole show,
Mhm.
you're like, I was going to go with once a week. And you're like, no, if you're going to do this, 2 times bare minimum. And I'm like, all right, Jay Croft said 2 times, 2 times minimum,
Yeah. And it does, especially kicking things off, trying to hit that, beginning audience aspect of things too. The more, if you can sort of blitz with all of that stuff, the more you can do that, especially in the beginning when you're trying to build that audience. That's why you go and record 8 episodes before you ever
Sure.
launch, and
Yeah,
so you have those
episodes done in the can before we ever even launched. It was
that's
like
perfect.
90 days of work pre-launch just to get the
Wow.
content ready and all of that.
Yeah, because it is, and there's no magic formula. There's no 6 posts on LinkedIn and 4 on this. Like, it doesn't exist. I mean, I would say doing something daily is pretty darn critical to really build any kind of audience or engagement.
Awesome.
That doesn't have to be a full-fledged interview podcast every day. That
Sure.
can be twice a week, and post about those contents, and ongoing, keeping that
Totally.
up. But you got to stay alive.
Yeah, that's going to be the next evolution of this podcast here in the next month or so. That'll be rolling out all the new posts from this, the Instagram stuff, emails. I just had to be honest with myself and be like, yo, I don't have the bandwidth. I got to bring on somebody to help me.
That's interesting you say that, because I wondered, I think that's been in my head with your show. Of just of that, right? Like that lack of, as much as I follow you and I see your Facebook posts and obviously on your list and all of that, like, why am I not hearing about this show more?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
That's why.
And that's interesting to still go. And again, like the quality of the interviews, thank goodness you started anyway, right?
Exactly.
And now as you go promote this thing, it's Netflix binge watch time, right? Binge listen time. It's like, oh my God, look at all this. And now I can go and, oh, I love AJ. This is awesome. But if I landed on 2 episodes and the topics were like, okay, but now I'm going to go into the 30 episodes and go, oh yeah, I wanted to write a book. I wanted to do this. Like, love it.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is just me being honest. Like we're traveling Europe for 5.5 months doing this show. My daughter is 16 months old now, so that's a whole new challenge in juggling schedules. Plus my wife does real estate investing, and plus she has her corporate career, plus we're moving back to Dallas, plus didn't have a home because we'd sold everything, so we had to find that. So there's all of these moving pieces, and I was like, well, I mean, I know what to do, but what's the truth of what I can do in this moment? Yeah. And so could I spend more time hustling and grinding? I absolutely could. And it would fuck my marriage. So it's like, am I willing to pay that price? And I'm not. Right. So for me, it's just aligning with the truth of okay, I can get out 2 episodes. I can use Instagram stories to promote the show. And that's just what it's going to be until I bring on a team member to help me here in the next month or so. We'll bring on a team member to be able to do some of those things that I know need to be done.
Yeah.
That's just great. The truth. That's just the truth of what it is for me right now.
Absolutely. And when you get into that, I think that's another part of that cadence and that structure is planning that stuff and being purposeful with that. I've worked at those for other podcasts I've put together for folks. And again, it's somewhat arbitrary. There's no hard and fast rule, but set yourself some rules. Right. I do if an episode goes live on a Tuesday, well then on Tuesday on Twitter, Facebook, and get the video promo, and LinkedIn still, and that, but just work out what that is. Yep. Because it will you will love yourself so much more. Yeah. if you do that, and you just go to this thing, and the other thing too is that now when you go and you get help, you get those virtual assistants. They have a guideline to work from, and they just go, oh, cool, I just put this out.
Yep. Exactly. Cool, man. Next question. How do you think it's important for somebody to really put their real personality into something? And here's the reason I say this. A lot of people are like, be authentic. Well, my argument with this is this: if you're having to be authentic, then you're inauthentic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, be fucking you, whatever that is,
Right.
whatever that personality is. But do you think it's important, or do people need to play a role for their market?
Yeah, I think it's both, honestly. I think ultimately the real you should shine through, because that's just it's just like, are you going to be a liar or not, right?
Sure,
Like it's going
sure.
to be, it's so much easier to just tell the truth all the time. It's just be yourself all the time, and you're going to attract the people that you attract and repel the people you repel, and that's the way the world works, and that's awesome, right? I think when the only aspect of like play, I wouldn't even put it that way, but in that realm of kind of playing a role or whatever,
Sure.
is deciding on a tone, deciding on a voice, right? And being purposeful with that, because I'm a very different person, at work or with my buddies or with my wife, like we've all experienced that. Ultimately, we're the same person with values
Sure.
and principles and stuff, but different personalities come out, different things. So I think it's okay and actually a good thing to decide two aspects of this. One is your tone. Is this going to be a funnier pod? Do I want to make sure that I keep things light? Because you have to be purposeful with that, because if you just, someone like me, for instance, you and I are both like this, right? Like we take other people's energy, we mirror
Sure.
other people's energy
Exactly.
a lot. And so if we're not purposeful, we haven't made that decision on what we want our voice and our show to sound
Good.
like, then it's going to be whatever that other person brings.
Nice.
And that may not be what we want, right? And so, and that's really the other aspect of that, is also not just voice and tone, but a purpose to the show. Like I want, let's say, if I want this show to be as opposed to the last show, rather than just me showing up and whoever the expert is, we're going to discuss that and everything. I want this next show to be 2 experts, 3 experts having a conversation about a specific topic. Well, that sounds easy enough. That takes real purpose to go and design a show that way and to make sure that you stay on track that way, because you can fall into really easily, hey, just talking in a conversation, have it. Oh yeah, I forgot. I want that. Okay, no, let's bring this back to discussing this topic and making sure that this is getting solved for the audience, because this is the promise I made at the beginning of the episode. So there's kind of 2 aspects of that it's none of it is inauthentic by
Sure.
making those decisions, but there's value in being purposeful with that.
Now that makes sense, man. Like in episode number 2, I brought on Jeremy Gene Wilson to talk about like human design. Now, human design for me specifically has really helped me set that tone, because I'm a 3/5. So I'm a rebel general. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be fucking disruptive. Like that is me. And I'm also going to be super direct and pretty tight and concise and lead whatever that is for me. So that's been kind of my guide marker when it came to my voice, because I was like, this is who I am. This is how I'm biologically wired to be a human in this human body during this lifetime. And so that kind of gave me my guidepost. And I've started bringing human design in for clients as well, only for that purpose. Like, hey, let's figure out what you are. If you're a 1/3, 1/6, or whatever it is, and then let's tailor your personality to that, because that's you. And that's really helped a lot of people, man.
Yeah, and it is tough, and it's a strange. I mean, it's a whole episode in of itself, right? Because
Totally.
it's such a strange. Because the way you started this question is how I think most people think about it. Like, well, yeah, of course, I'll just be myself.
Sure.
But as soon as you go one step deep into that, well, what does that mean? What is yourself? What is that voice? Which one, right? And again, it's harder for me because I'm that mirror. Like I'll dig into, I take on that other people's energy and things like that. And it's harder to be purposeful and
you're a 3/5 too, right? Though.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a 3/5, it's similar. It's like, how can you be disruptive and fun and silly and playful and have variety, because that's that third line. And then that
Yeah.
fifth line is that fucking general. And it's like, how can you lead the direction and lead the audience to a specific destination so it can still have that edge of seriousness and directness, but still be very playful? And you're super fucking playful. And so you could definitely bring that into that brand.
But yeah, and just like you're talking about though, it's being purposeful. It's reminding yourself.
Sure.
It's the sticky note that's like, don't forget to be the general.
Yeah.
Because you're having fun right now, but be the general too.
Yeah.
You know, and it's harder, but
it is. Cool, man. Last couple questions, and we're gonna wrap this up. But I think this is an important question, which is, so how does content marketing really set up sales calls or sell programs or help people make money?
So two main ways. One is, like we talked about, putting value out there constantly in front of the right people. That's the other half of that. Like, it's got to be the right content, but you got to get that content in front of the right people. If you're doing it to sell conferences and sell speaking gigs, well, who's hiring? Who's making that decision? You know, if you're a speaker and your expertise is in, you know, the HR industry, obviously you're going to have content around that, but who's booking you? Who's making that decision? And make sure your content is tailored and getting in front of those people who are pulling the trigger. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is what I talked about earlier, is that, you know, kind of getting out of the typical content marketing mindset and go sales with the same material and have that conference booker on your show as a guest, right? So that they know you and there's a relationship and they will book you, and then you will have that topic of, you know, HR and reach those folks.
Nice. Love it. If somebody follows your advice and your wisdom that you've shared with us today, what do you know is like possible for them?
Oh, I mean, I don't want to be cliche with sky's the limit, but there's kind of top and bottom. Like, the harsh reality answer is, well, you better do it or you're not going to get anywhere. It's back to that, like, too bad. It's
that for sure.
Yeah, it's the price of entry today.
Yeah.
Like, to get anywhere, to be of, it doesn't matter that you don't like social media. Too bad. If you're a speaker and you're this, like, those are the boxes that are getting checked. Figure it out.
For sure.
Right. The more positive answer to this is that all of these people that you look at right now and see as just, you know, they're millions of followers, you see them everywhere, the Gary V's, all of this stuff, like as far ahead of you in that realm as they are, it is so absolutely possible, all of that potential and so much more that it has ever been in our entire lives, to go and build that for yourself and have that kind of notoriety. And then, I mean, just blanket, boom, done. But also, especially if you are, you know, in the insurance world and want to be known the way Gary Vee is in the marketing world in the insurance, or even further down in niche area, you can go in and dominate within a year. You can own the, you know, the agricultural insurance realm and space so fast because nobody else is doing. We're still in that time that as soon as you do this, any of this content marketing and podcasting, you think everyone's doing it because you see so many voices. So, and then as soon as you zoom out and you remind yourself, oh, like, nobody, it is a tiny fraction. There's so few people even listening to podcasts. As big as the audience is, it's the most encouraging, awesome thing because there's so much potential out there.
Now, if you could go back in time and start all over again, what wisdom would you tell your past self that would help you move the needle in this game of content marketing?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know how far back I would go, but as far back as possible, get started sooner. Nice. And the realization I had at 40, I wish I'd had at 17, which is, gives a shit? Like that attitude
So good.
changed my life. And I don't know where it came from, if it was the age thing or whatever, but in that time of starting Startup Dallas, of wanting to be great at networking and wanting to go and be able to talk to everybody, like somehow I went from that guy from like show up at an event and stand there like this. It just came to like, I don't give a shit what these people think. And then it was just like bust through the door of a room full of people I don't know, like, hey, what's going on? You know, like, and it changed everything. And without that horrible, stupid filter being ripped away, I mean, I couldn't have done any of the stuff that we've talked about on the show today, right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
Awesome, brother. Well, dude, if people want to learn more about you, they want to hire you for content marketing strategy. I mean, you definitely were the brains behind this show. So people listen to the show, he's your dude. Where should they go? I know you have croftmediaco.com. So it's croftmediaco.com. I know people can connect with you personally on Facebook, facebook.com/thejasonscroft.
Yeah, I'm social everywhere. The Jason Croft.
Okay, cool.
Everywhere, Instagram, all that stuff. Hit me up on any of it. I'm always wandering through. But yeah, Croft Media Co. there for sure. Reaching out, Jason at croftmediaco.com. You can shoot me an email if you like. Happy to talk. Happy to do all this on LinkedIn. The Jason Croft as well. So
awesome. Cool, brother. Well, dude, thank you so much for carving out time from your day, your family. Being
absolutely.
Here. I fucking love you to pieces. You know,
love you too, man.
You're
this
amazing,
is awesome.
dude. Thank you.
So much fun. So excited about your show, man. I just love it. You're killing it like I knew you would. It's in writing, I think, too. In fact, I know it is. I called it. It's gonna be amazing. You're like, why do you think that? I was like, shut up. It's gonna be amazing.
I remember that message.
You know it's going to be. So awesome. Thanks for having me on.
You bet.
Well, there you have it, my friend, Jason Croft. Man, I just love that guy. He's like one of the first people I met when I moved into Dallas, and somehow he'd been following me online or something, and he reached out to me, invited me to their meetup for coffee or something like that back in 2014. And man, I'm really glad that he did. And since then, he's just become a really, really good friend of mine, and I just really love that guy to pieces. He's just a solid human being and just has a heart of gold. And I hope this episode really served you. And I hope you were able to glean some actionable tactics, some actionable strategies that you can use and implement inside your business as a coach and a course creator. And by the way, if you're digging this podcast, like, you don't need to go rate and review it on iTunes unless you really want to. And I'll tell you that if you do, it really does help the show in a big way, because it's what really helps this podcast get into the ears of more people. And I'll also tell you, if you're a fan of this podcast, then go to www.ajamex.com/community to join the free Shift community. And inside that free community, I cover topics that we talk about on this podcast a lot more in depth than I do here in this format. And I'm putting out free content like this every Tuesday that's even better than what most coaches are making people pay for. So head on over to ajamex.com/community to join now and watch a few of the training videos inside that group. I guarantee you're going to love them. They're going to serve you. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to this podcast. I really appreciate it, because I know you could be listening to any other podcast on the planet, yet you chose this one. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Until next time, my friend, I'm out. Peace.
Well, that's all I've got for this episode of the Anthony John Amyx podcast, but we have plenty more to help you become unstoppable in life and business. So head on over to ajamex.com for exclusive resources, information, and tools to help you break through to a new level of freedom, purpose, and success. I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Bye for now.